After only 1 month, The Flash is finally being released from theaters and onto streaming. After it should have made $1 billion in the box office, I'm about to give you my review on the Flash film, so I hope you enjoy the video. The Flash is directed by Andy Muschietti and it stars Ezra Miller. So, we all know about Ezra Miller by now. He's a criminal, and he's just a really bad human being, and he needs serious help. What more can you say about him that hasn't already been said? He needs help. We all hope he gets it, and, he stops being the Flash for the DCU. But, besides that, he did an actually really well performance in the role of Barry Allen and Ezra Miller. And the arc he goes through in this movie is actually really well until the ending of the film, which just actually ruins the entire movie. The ending and the post-credit scene. Both of those ruin the movie, but before we get there, is the movie good? I'd say the movie is good. It's not perfect because, like everyone's saying, it has bad CGI, and the ending and post-credit scene kind of ruined the entire movie. So if you were to stop watching after Barry leaves the courthouse and, ask Iris out on that dinner date, if the movie ended there, it would be solid. It would probably be a 9 out of 10. But it didn't end there, and then the film's ending ruined it all, and then the post-credit scene just slapped everyone in the face. So this movie has Ezra Miller as the Flash, Sasha Calle Supergirl, Michael Shannon returns as Zod, and Michael Keaton returns as Batman, as well as Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, and not Henry Cavill. He does get a faceless Superman cameo again on the TV, which is a shame because, this will be the last appearance of Ben Affleck's Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman, and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, but there was no Henry Cavill Superman. So the last film for Henry Cavill Superman will be Black Adam, which is not really a good way for him to leave off the character of Superman with a setup that's never gonna happen. It would have been cool if they just would have done what they did with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and and Ben Affleck's Batman, with Henry Cavill Superman, and leave it off like that, and we get a good ending to his character. That didn't happen. The beginning of the movie is actually quite solid. It's the starting off with the Justice League, minus Aquaman, Cyborg, and Superman. It's just Flash, Batman, and at the end it's Wonder Woman. A lot of people say it felt like an episode of the Justice League cartoon back in the 2000s. I never watched that show, so I can't really comment on it, but it was a really good scene. It was a really good, beginning action set piece. But you had almost half of the Justice League. No, you did have half the Justice League there, which is nice to see. But yeah, it was only half the Justice League, and Wonder Woman showed up at the very end of the sequence, so it really wasn't like a Justice League team up. It was more of a Flash and Batman team up, and then Wonder Woman joined at the very end to save Batman. The lasso scene that they did with Bruce and Barry, it was just like the scene they did with Aquaman and Justice League, which is inspired by what happened in the comics when Green Lantern touched Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. The scene, that joke is pretty bad, so I won't really talk about it that much. But after, that entire beginning of this movie where Barry, Bruce, and Diana are just stopping Falcone's idiot child steal something from a nursery, with the baby scene. I'm not going to really talk about the baby scene because I don't really mind it. and I don't really see... the only thing about the baby scene that's really weird is the CGI, which it was noticeable without being noticeable, if you know what I mean. I've seen the movie 3 times, and all 3 times the baby scene hasn't bothered me, so I don't really care about that. But after that sequence happens, Barry gets a call from his dad, which they did recast from both Justice League and Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. They did recast the father because of scheduling conflicts, which I don't mind. The actor does a fine job in the few scenes that he's in, and he does a good job. So Barry gets a call from his father, and while he's with his father talking about the mom and about his appeal that's going to happen tomorrow, Barry runs to his old house, remembers the last time he saw his mom doing his 24 possibility outcome thing. He does math while talking to his mom. He dances with her when the song comes on the radio. And Barry's mother dies, just like in the comics, but the way she dies is really unclear. Like, everyone thinks it just, it was a burglary gone wrong. They thought everyone was out of the house, but, the mother and the child were still there, so they killed the mother and ran off. And the only reason that happened was because the mother forgot a second can of tomatoes, and the father had to go get a second can of tomatoes. And so the burglary happened then, when the father was gone. But, everyone really knows that it was Reverse Flash who kills Barry's mom. They just never implied it or showed it. So so the people out there that were saying that I don't think Reverse Flash killed the mom, or he didn't kill the mom, I wouldn't like try and argue with you, but everyone knows that Reverse Flash did kill the mother, but you can argue that since they didn't imply it or show it, that it didn't happen. So, but then, after the call ends with Barry, he starts running to, I guess to take his frustrations out and because he's in his feelings about his mother being murdered and his father wrongly imprisoned. And then while he's running, he taps into the Speed Force and time travels, which is, I actually kind of like the depiction of the Speed Force in this movie, because it's the first time we see it in live action on the big screen and in the DCEU. So, and the Kronen Bowl, which is how they depict time in the DCEU, according to this movie, looks actually really cool. It's just, and you run depicting on how far you want to go back, and then you, like, I guess, reverse your running when you want to, rewind where you want to go in time. I kind of like the CW's version of the Flash time traveling better, because, you just think of what time you want to go to, you run super fast, you go there. It's a lot more simpler, but, that doesn't matter, because he realizes he can time travel. So then we get the final scene of Ben Affleck's Batman, where Barry talks to him about time travel and saving both of their parents. Obviously, Ben is against it because you don't know what will happen, but Barry, after, he talks to Iris and realizes, he just has to put another can of tomatoes in his mom's basket. Then he goes back and time travels, and that's how the movie's plot starts to move forward. He time travels, puts the can in his mom's cart, and then he, when hanging out with his mom and dad again, after seeing both of them and being able to touch both of them and hug them after so many years, he sees his young self coming to do the laundry. And the almost entirety of this movie takes place in 2013, when I guess Barry's 18. I didn't know he was 18. I thought he was a lot younger, but that would make our Barry right now 28. And I've heard this before, but both Barry 28 version and both Barry's 28 and 18 look the exact same, besides the hair. They didn't even try and make 18-year-old Barry look younger, which I get it, want to save on the CGI, But, you know, it's noticeable that they look the same age, even though they're 10 years apart. Ezra Miller's Barry Allen arc. Let's just talk about his character and arc for a moment. His arc is to let go of his mother's death. And, you know, he does that until the end undoes his lesson. So he goes through time trying to save the world from Michael Shannon Zod, who's going to terraform the Earth into a new Krypton. And I'm going to finish talking about this at the end when I get to the final battle. But first, let's talk about both Barrys. So the young Barry is much like we see in Justice League and Justice League. He's annoying and he's hyperactive. And so that allows older Barry to reflect on his past and see how annoying he was. And, you know, at the end of the movie, you can see that he's matured. In one scene, he even goes off on his younger Barry about, you know, how he takes everything for granted because the second Barry has never lost anything. He's always had a perfect childhood. You know, his mother wasn't murdered. His father wasn't taken away. He's had a perfect childhood. He's been spoiled. And so he doesn't know the loss and meaning that Barry has found. So he doesn't care. He takes everything for granted. And, you know, by the end of the movie, that both of the Barrys kind of mature. But, you know, as soon as the second Barry matures, he dies. So, yeah. That's pretty much both of their arcs. The young Barry tries, you know, the young Barry actually doesn't have an arc. His arc is to help older Barry have an arc of maturing himself. And so, yeah. And then we have Michael Shannon's Zod returning back. He is barely in the movie. Like, if you were to put all of his screen time into a few minutes, it'd probably be like 2 minutes of screen time. And so, yeah, there's not really much to comment on him. They don't do anything new with him at all, so there's no reason to talk about him at all. But Sasha Calle Supergirl, which was a huge part of the marketing, by the way, when she's introduced, which is like an hour and 20 into the movie, her arc is very, very good. It's really good. All of the arcs in this movie with Michael Keaton, Ezra Miller, and Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Flash, and Batman, all three of their arcs are really good. Except that Michael Keaton's arc is not fleshed out enough. Sasha Calle's arc is very short and not fleshed out enough. And Ezra Miller's arc is really good until the ending of the movie where it just ruins his arc entirely. But Sasha Calle's Supergirl, after being in captivity all the time she's been on Earth, she doesn't trust humans. She thinks they're an evil species. So what they could have done with that is when Barry and Batman, both Barrys and Batman free her, she discovers the beauty of humanity and sees that they're worth protecting, like she does in the comics and stuff. She doesn't do that. She releases herself. Doesn't release herself. She leaves both Barrys and Batman and goes to Zod, where he sees him start a war with the humans and says, "That's not our way. That's not the Kryptonian way. He's not my people. I'll help you stop him." And, you know, she learns about how good humanity is from that, I guess. But, you know, we could have had like a 2 to 3 minute scene with her discovering, like, and seeing humans interact and seeing the good nature from them and see the beauty of humanity. She doesn't do that. So her arc is there. It's just not fleshed out enough. And it's just, she's barely in the movie as well. And that just, like, she has such a good arc. She's barely in the movie, which the acting is good. It's just that the character is not so good when the arc is just not fleshed out enough. But Michael Keaton's Batman, which has returned over 20 years later, 2 decades later, we see Michael Keaton back on the big screen, which has also been a huge part of the marketing for this movie. And like I said, his arc is really it's really good, except for the fact that it's not fleshed out enough. he waits till they find where Sasha Calle Supergirl is held captive, where they think is Kal-El. He helps them go get her because, how Barry talked to him, and, he realized what they're trying to do, and he just helps them, because he's been really isolated since Gotham's one of the safest cities in the world now. He's lost his meaning, his purpose, and now he finally has that back, and he's back to his full self. And he helps them rescue Supergirl. And then when he comes back and he talks with the Prime Barry, 28 Barry, and they have a heart-to-heart about their parents and how he became Batman because, to honor his parents and to honor his parents, basically. And Barry, he thought maybe by becoming Batman he could bring his parents back, but Barry actually did it. And so they have a heart-to-heart about that. And at the end of the movie, when he eventually does die, he says to Barry, "You finally brought me back." Which, his arc is really nice. It just needed to be fleshed out a little bit more. And explain, why at first he doesn't want to help them, and then he does help them. That's a little strange. And the very final battle, people say they lost it at the third climax. I didn't really think that. I thought the third climax was really good. The action for the final battle is really good, and that's when it starts to go full circle. Barry finally learns that this is a fixed point in time where they can't change it. The world will end. Batman and Supergirl will die. And so, Batman teaches Flash that lesson when he says, "You already brought me back." And so Barry learns that he has to go undo his mom's death. He has to go back and ensure that his mom dies so the world doesn't end. And Barry, too, he's young. He's taken everything for granted. He doesn't know what it's like to have loss. So he's like, I can fix this. He just keeps going back in time over and over and over again until he becomes Dark Flash. Well, he doesn't actually become Dark Flash. His future self becomes Dark Flash. And, when Barry finally convinces him somehow that in order to save the universe and the multiverse, because Barry, too, trying to keep saving the world is causing the universe to destroy itself and the multiverse, all the other universes around it. Which I like how they depicted the multiverse as a bunch of different, planet spheres of different colors. That was cool. But yeah, Barry finally learns his lesson, and he rewinds time, saves his mom. He doesn't save his mom, but he saves the universe. But this is where his arc, after coming full circle, unravels itself and it ruins the entire arc for him and the story itself. He puts the can of tomatoes that his father is supposed to grab on the top shelf so he looks up and the security cameras spot his face, so he has an alibi of where he was when Nora was killed. Which changed the timeline and brought George Clooney here. Which George Clooney serves no purpose here. James Gunn even himself said that they haven't cast their Batman yet, and it's really absurd that they even brought him in there. In the press screenings and everything, the early releases, whenever the Foot stepped out of the door, they cut to Barry saying, "What the F? Who is that?" And that's where they cut the movie. And that's where they should have cut the movie here as well. But they didn't do that. They showed George Clooney and ruined the entire message of the story. Originally, the ending was that Michael Keaton and Sasha Calle Supergirl were going to be the permanent Batman and Supergirl of the universe after Barry put the cans of tomato on the top shelf. But that definitely didn't happen because James Gunn has to soft reboot the universe. And so the DCEU as a whole ends in this movie. And the timeline is reset, kind of, because, you still have the post-credit scene with Arthur Curry, which serves no purpose to the story. It's just a fun gag, which isn't even fun because it's the final. This is meant to close off like almost everyone's arc from the Justice League, in which they don't really have an arc. They're just there at the beginning, and that's pretty much it. It's the cameo, the post-credit scene at the end. Everyone's talked about it. It's awful. The villains, Michael Zod is there to move the plot forward, and he doesn't get any development at all. You might as well just watch The Man of Steel. You might as well watch Man of Steel, which is actually a really good movie. It's actually really, really good. And Dark Flash he only has a total of like a minute of screen time if you add all of his appearances together and all the seconds he has on screen. He's there at the very end to teach Barry 2 a lesson. So Barry 2 sacrifices himself and stops Dark Flash, so the multiverse is saved. Both of the villains in this movie, they're non-existent. The villains of the movie are non-existent. They might as well have not been in the film at all. That especially goes for Dark Flash. He might as well have not even been in the movie. Like, they could have replaced him with Reverse Flash, which wouldn't make any sense at all. So, they should have just kept Zod as the only villain of the movie, which is a non-existent villain of the movie. And, the emotional stuff in this movie with Barry's mother is really good, which is why I really like this movie. Except that the ending just unravels it all and makes it so bad. So bad. So, the movie is good. It's actually really, really good. It's honestly great. Except its flaws are so bad. Like, the flaws just are so bad. And kind of, if I wasn't tolerant, the flaws would actually probably ruin this movie for me. Because they undermine the movie itself and just ruin it. But I don't really mind them. So, the movie is good, but it has its flaws. So, my rating is actually, it was an 8.7 when I started writing my notes and when I started talking and recording this video, but, I think I'm going to take it down to an 8.3 out of 10, and I'm going to give it an A-. It's entertaining and enjoyable, but its flaws are just there, and they're just poking at you the entire time the movie is playing. And especially at the end. So, that's all my thoughts and opinions on The Flash. All three arcs that Michael Keaton's Batman, Sasha Calle Supergirl, and Ezra Miller's Flash, all of their arcs are in the movie, and they're really great, except that 2 of them weren't fleshed out enough, and the 3rd one was undermined at the very end of the film. Those are my thoughts and opinions on The Flash. So, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and tell me what you thought of The Flash down below. Did you go see the Flash film and did you like it? Tell me what you thought about the Flash film and what did you think of the entirety of the DCEU. And share this with your friends if you want to. And I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.